Hi, and welcome to another episode where I take vintage old drive-in speakers, clean them up, fix the innards, replace the wire, and make them work beautifully. What I have here on the table now is a beautiful piece. It's from the Westport Drive-In in Wichita, Kansas, and if you can read, you can actually see that it is from the Westport Drive-In in Wichita, Kansas. I like this. I don't like the paint job. The paint is peeling off. It's obvious whoever did this didn't realize they tried to use some sort of paint with aluminum without priming it. And all that does is just makes it flake off over time. So we're going to fix that. The back here is this hammer blue. And I haven't decided if I'm going to match up the front to the back or repaint this as well. Or leave it alone. And look at this nice marking here. Universal Drive-In Theater Manufacturing Company. That's cool. These are Phillips head screws, and they're going to have to come out too. I'm going to replace them with Holt screws that will be representative of the product. There is a wire on here, so that gives me some thought that this unit may have a working speaker and a working potentiometer knob, which is the volume. But I won't know that until I test it out. Okay, so let's open up this bad boy, shall we? Now, I did a little bit of research. The Westport Drive-In was operational in Wichita, Kansas from the late 1950s to 1979 when it finally closed. And I believe the land there is now probably an office park or apartment buildings or some other feature. And you usually, when you see drive-ins that are branded, the branding is often engraved or stamped in. I don't think I've ever seen a drive-in speaker where it's raised, like it was actually made as part of the casting. So this is kind of a unique piece, and I'm very, very pleased to crack it open. Let's take a look inside. Wow, look at this. This speaker is almost pristine. The wiring looks nice. Look at the date, August 1959. So this unit may have been operational for the entire run of the Westport Drive-In. Now, it's got two flathead screws, but it also has two posts, and that's what anchors it in. And it's got a nice little barrier grommet here, even though it's got a knot so as to keep somebody from yanking the wire out. Let's take a look at the wire really quickly. Yike. Okay, this is going to have to be stripped. I'm going to put a new spade connector on the ends of this. I don't like this frayed wire laying around. It just looks terrible. But if this is the most I have to do in terms of restoring the innards, I'm okay with that. I just wanted to show you the speaker itself. The core looks pretty good. As I said, I'm not really thinking I'm going to need to replace this. Here is the grill. That's going to need to be cleaned, and it's got a nice little semi-hard rubber grommet that I'm going to see if I can get that cleaned up too. So I've got the chassis taken apart and I've put the innards in a safe place. Now let's see if I can get rid of some of this crusted old paint. And we're going to use this aircraft remover. It's had a win-loss record of about 500, so let's see how we do on this. I especially want to see if I can get this paint off of the letters. So I have a feeling that's going to be raised and it'll look really nice when it's repainted. Why don't you take a look at this? After I sprayed it just for a couple of minutes, you could see the paint is already bubbling up. This is going to be an easy remove. I have a very good feeling. And I also did a spray of the back as well, and it's starting to bubble up as well. So we'll come back to it and see if this stuff cleans up nicely. So while the aircraft remover is removing the paint from the chassis, I took a moment and spliced off the old frayed wire. I trimmed it back a bit and I added these fork spade lugs on here and crimped them on. And I must tell you, this was really my first try at crimping on spade lugs like this. And it took about 4 or 5 tries to get it correct, but I did test the unit and it is making a sound, so I call it a success. I gotta tell you, the aircraft paint remover did a really good job getting most of the speckled mottled paint off of the chassis. And now, let's put a little self-etching primer on this, because it's going to need to be painted. And paint doesn't really stick well to aluminum without self-etching primer. So after I primed these 2 halves of the chassis, I've decided I'm going to paint them. And I'm probably just going to use one color. I'm not going to get too esoteric. And I'm going with this Tamiya flat light blue. It's the same color that's also known as Richard Petty blue, because that's the color that famed driver Richard Petty used on his car. So we're going to give this a nice coating and see how it turns out after it dries. Okay, so it's time to reassemble everything. First thing I'm going to do is put a fresh grill in here, nice clean one. Then I'm going to add this little rubber silicone 4-inch gasket spacer, because the other one was kind of worn out and I really would like to replace as much as possible if I need to. This unit goes back on these 2 little posts, and then we take the screws and we put them back in the unit. Okay, we're going to put the hex nut back on here. Now, at some point I would really like to demonstrate more about how these units can be restored and demonstrate the sound quality. I just have to be very careful about that because of a couple of things. One, I don't want to get a strike from YouTube for playing something copyrighted, and I also only have one camera. I only have the cell phone camera that I'm recording this now. So for me to do this and put on a Bluetooth makes it a little difficult. So at some point I am going to go get a second camera, and then I'll be able to do all this fun stuff. But for now, you just have to trust me. When I say it works, it really does. Alright. You know what? I do not like it just being an unexposed knob. That's why I got this acorn-shaped knob from Detroit Diecast. They're really nice people. They don't sponsor me or anything, and I'm not asking them to, but I do want to recognize they have good quality. All I have to do is just push that right on there. Okay, now we're going to put the back on. And this cable actually has this nice little rubber grommet, which will keep it from, not only keep it from getting pulled out, it'll also give it a little bit of an extra protection against exposure to the elements. I'm just going to close this right on there, or try to. There we go. Now my original plan was to replace the 2 carriage bolts with a different type of screw. However, I didn't realize that the screws I wanted to use are not long enough. So I have to use the original. Now I don't have a problem with using the original. I really don't. Sometimes it's a thing with me with restoration. I might want to use what's there, or I might want to try something new. And this is also part of the fun of this hobby. Being able to work with different materials. Think on the fly when something's not the way you want it to be. and fix it up afterward if you get lucky. I think it was Keith Haring, famous graffiti artist, who said, I don't know what my art's going to look like before I start. I don't know what it's going to look like when I'm working on it. And I have no idea what the finished product is going to be when it's done. And I'm going to tell you, Keith Haring was one of the most amazing artists of the 20th century. Trust me on this. Okay, and we are done. Look at how beautiful this thing is. It's got a brand new knob, brand new paint scheme. The internals are cleaned up. I really like this. So normally after these videos are done, I talk about how I'm going to put this on my Etsy site, which, by the way, here's the link to it, chuckmillercreatives.etsy.com. Not this time. This one is not being sold on Etsy. In fact, it's not being sold at all, and I'll explain why. This is actually going to be sent. I've got a little mailer box down here, and I'm going to wrap this up, and it's actually going to the Wichita Sedgwick Historical Society in Wichita, Kansas. I've contacted the curator. They're very interested in this piece, and it'll be part of their collection. And I'm really okay with that because, honestly, this really belongs in a museum, or at least in a historic society, so that people can actually enjoy seeing a product of Wichita's history. Now, once I turn this off, I'm going to wrap this up, put it in a mailer, and send it off to Kansas. But I did want to say thank you to everybody who watched for this video, and by all means, visit chuckmillercreatives.etsy.com, and, as always, like, share, and subscribe. And I'll see you in the next video.